Welcome to Ecclesia Principles, a biblical strategy for believers to engage in God's design for government with Ray Eppard.
Hello, glad you could join us again today. We have been we've been looking at the spiritual dynamics of government. Now with this, last week, we were talking about strongholds and beginning to understand how they actually are created, that process. Our text is 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5. And we've been kind of looking at this in reverse order because Paul was talking about tearing them down. Well, how are they built up? And with this, what we've seen is that there are some steps that are included in this. And ultimately, Satan, with his spiritual host of wickedness in heavenly places, the rulers of the darkness of this world, the powers, the principalities, they are after creating strongholds. And if you would, their crowning achievement, their end goal, is if they can get a stronghold institutionalized within a locality, a region, a nation. If they can get it institutionalized, what does that mean? If they can get it to become the policy of the nation, if it can become a part of the laws and the policies of a nation, that is their crowning achievement. Now, let's go ahead and read 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5, and let's look at these steps because we want to just see it. We've talked about two steps, and today I'm going to introduce the third one. He says, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. Now notice that last part there, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. The first step in creating a stronghold is the introduction of thoughts that are thoughts of disobedience. They're not in alignment with God. Look at the serpent in the garden with Eve. He introduced a thought. Has God really said that you can't eat of every tree? Nah, you won't die. Those thoughts of disobedience, those thoughts of moving in a direction that God says not to move, that is phase one. That is step one of the building of a stronghold. Now, at that point, if it's brought into captivity, then you can remain in freedom. You can remain in blessing. But if that thought is entertained, if that thought is engaged, then you set yourself up to go to step two. And step two says every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. See, the more you give thought to this idea of disobedience, and then you begin to see the benefits of that disobedience, what you could gain from it. In the story with Eve, it was she saw that this fruit was good to the taste. It was something to make one wise. And it doesn't actually say it there, but it would actually make her more like God. That was what the devil was really saying. God didn't really make you in his image because he didn't let you have this. He's got this, but he says you can't have it, so you're really not like him. And it's beginning to exalt itself against the knowledge of God. It's actually exalting itself above the knowledge of God. In other words, there's more. God's just been hiding it from you. And in our culture today, it would be more like Well, there's actually more. Just God and religion are keeping you from it. That's the next phase of a stronghold. And then you get to the third phase. He says, pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments. Casting down arguments. You see, it goes from a thought, it goes up to, this is a good thought, we need to look into this. There's actually reasons that this should be the way that it is. And then it moves into the place of an argument. And it also, some translations talks about casting down imaginations. And we'll talk about those two aspects because both aspects are very real. You see, today, there are cultural strongholds being built in our nation to put captives into, to bind them up. And those things have reached stronghold status. How do we know that? There are a lot of arguments. There are a lot of arguments. And if we're going to cast down strongholds, we've got to be able to address those arguments. God bless you. See you tomorrow.